You felt it before, that strange sense that your reactions aren't entirely under your control. The way you think, decide, and even feel seems to follow a pattern you didn't consciously choose. Sometimes you act in ways that surprise even you, not because you're inconsistent, but because something deeper is guiding your responses. You might call it personality or habit, but what if it's something far more structured and far less random? Carl Jung believed the human mind is not chaotic, but organized into patterns. He argued that each person operates through a dominant psychological type that shapes how they experience reality. This type is not something you pick. It forms early and quietly becomes a lens through which you see everything. That's why two people can go through the same situation and come out with completely different conclusions. It's not about intelligence, it's about perception. Your mind doesn't just absorb reality, it filters it. It selects what matters and ignores what doesn't without asking for your permission. Over time, this filtering becomes so automatic that you stop noticing it. You begin to assume your version of reality is the only one that exists. This is where problems begin, because when others don't see what you see, it feels like they're wrong. But they're not wrong, they're different. Their mind is organized in a completely different way. Your type determines what energizes you and what drains you. It decides whether you seek stimulation or avoid it. It influences whether you trust logic or values, whether you focus on facts or possibilities. These preferences don't just guide your thoughts. They quietly shape your entire life. The career you choose often aligns with your dominant type. The relationships you maintain reflect how your mind connects with others. Even your biggest frustrations tend to follow predictable patterns. You keep running into the same walls because your mind keeps using the same tools. This is not failure. It's structure. Your mind is doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is that you've never been shown how it's built. So you try to fix your life without understanding the system running it. You push harder in directions that don't suit you. You blame discipline, motivation, or luck. But the issue goes deeper than any of those. There's a part of your mind that feels natural and effortless. It's the part you rely on without thinking. This is your dominant function. It's your greatest strength. But every strength comes with a cost. Because the more you rely on one way of thinking, the more you neglect the others. And what you neglect doesn't disappear. It goes underground. This neglected part of your mind becomes unstable. It reacts unpredictably when triggered. You've seen this in yourself. Moments where you overreact, lose control, or act completely out of character. Those moments are not random. They are your hidden side taking over. Your mind is not balanced. It is biased toward one way of functioning. That bias gives you clarity in some areas, but it blinds you in others. For example, if you rely on logic, you may struggle with emotional situations. If you rely on feelings, you may struggle with cold decision-making. If you focus on facts, you may miss bigger possibilities. If you chase possibilities, you may ignore reality. Every type has a strength. Every type has a weakness. The danger is believing your strength is the correct way, because that belief locks you into your limitations. When someone challenges your way of thinking, it feels personal, not because they attacked you, but because they challenge your structure. This is why certain conflicts never resolve. You're not arguing about facts. You're arguing from different systems. One person is trying to be logical. The other is trying to be meaningful. One is grounded in reality. The other is focused on potential. Neither is wrong, but neither fully understand the other. This lack of understanding creates frustration. It turns simple disagreements into emotional battles. Over time, these patterns repeat. The same arguments, the same misunderstandings, the same outcomes. You begin to think the problem is the other person. But often, the problem is the mismatch between your types. This doesn't just affect relationships. It affects your internal life as well. You may push yourself into environments that clash with your nature. You may chase goals that don't align with how your mind works. At first, you manage. You adapt. You push through. You perform. But eventually, the cost shows up. Exhaustion, anxiety, and a sense of emptiness. Not because you're weak. Because you're misaligned. You're using your mind in a way it wasn't designed to operate. And no amount of effort can fix that long term. Understanding your type changes everything. It gives you a map of your own mind. It shows you where your energy naturally flows. It explains why certain things feel easy and others feel impossible. But this knowledge is not comfortable because it removes your excuses. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You realize how much of your life has been shaped by unconscious habits. And then comes the difficult part, responsibility. Because your type is not your destiny. It's your starting point. You are not meant to stay within your comfort zone. You are meant to expand beyond it. Growth happens when you develop the parts of yourself you've ignored, the parts that feel unnatural and uncomfortable. If you are logical, you must learn to understand emotions. If you are emotional, you must learn to think objectively. If you live in possibilities, you must ground yourself in reality. If you live in reality, you must open yourself to new ideas. This is not easy. It feels forced at first. It feels like you're becoming someone else. But in reality, you're becoming more complete. Your mind is not meant to operate as a single function. It is meant to integrate all of them. But integration requires awareness. And awareness requires honesty. You must face the parts of yourself you've avoided, the weaknesses you've justified or ignored. This is where most people stop. They learn their type, but don't act on it. They use it as an explanation instead of a tool, a label instead of a path. But knowing your type without changing your behavior changes nothing. It only makes your patterns more visible. Real change begins when you step outside your default mode, when you challenge your automatic reactions, when you pause and ask, is this my habit or my choice? That question alone can shift everything, because it creates space between you and your pattern. It gives you control over something that once felt automatic. Your mind may have a dominant type, but you are not limited to it. You can learn to think differently. You can train yourself to respond in new ways, but only if you're willing to feel uncomfortable, only if you're willing to grow. Most people aren't. They stay where it feels safe. They repeat the same pattern for years, and they call it life. But now you know something different. You know your mind has a structure, and that structure is shaping everything. Your thoughts, your choices, your reality. The question is no longer whether your mind is controlling your life. The question is whether you're ready to take control back.